Gay people. Friend or foe? Some would say it depends on each individual because they're human beings. Others, like many people in the 60s and 70s, be that in the 1860s or the 1960s, would disagree and tell you foe. Los Angeles Gay Pride Parade.
Here we go.
So let's talk about the build-up to the Pride Parade. In 1966-67, as fans of the show and of civil rights violations may recall, the Black Cat Riot occurred on...
Big crossover.
That Venn diagram is one of my favorite. I have it framed on my wall.
It looks like Mickey's ears sticking out of his head.
The Black Cat Riot occurred on New Year's Eve in Silver Lake, as you covered. Anybody who hasn't heard, I'll just catch you up real quick. When undercover cops were feeling a little too hot and bothered and decided to pull out their phalluses and beat the S word out of patrons of the Black Cat, which was a gay bar in Silver Lake. It's still there, although it's much different than it was.
Much more butch.
Yeah. To hear the full story, consult the March Madness episode. Well, the Black Cat and many other police to gay community conflicts led to the founding of several activist groups such as PRIDE, which stands for Personal Rights in the Defense.
Talked all about that also.
Personal Rights in the Defense and Education, which was created by Steve Ginsburg. And the publication known as The Advocate was also started. It was a direct result because of...
I told you all this.
I'm catching people up, okay? People don't want to listen to March Madness.
They listen to all episodes before they listen to all other episodes.
Well, then they wouldn't come to this episode. We're not
You got to play that
enjoyable.
episode over this episode, and then you'll see that Jack Nicholson looks like a clown with blood on his face. The Illuminati staged the moon landing. That's all I wanted to say. Sorry.
So after Black Cat and all the other riots that came from that, there were these court trials, and a lot of court trials where many gay and lesbian residents were charged with lewd conduct, and it was one of the first times in the country that gay rights were fought for over in court for the 14th Amendment. That was the first time that was happening. So then we cut to New York in 1969 to Christopher Street in West Village, where men could go and hang out with other men, or ladies can go out and hang out with other ladies.
Why would they want to do that?
Just for a good time, just see what the other side's like. The Stonewall Inn, which was a gay club, was raided by police, and there was an altercation which occurred between the occupants and NYPD Blue. NYPD. Wow.
Oh my God! Did
Wow.
that really? My God.
That was
NBC has its hooks in
it.
you.
It was deep-seated, that thing.
Deep CSI'd. I mean,
Well, we're all FRIENDS here.
speaking of acronyms, I always, since the periods were in between the letters, I always
Me
thought
too.
that stood for something.
Like they were secret agents or something.
Frandler, Ronica, E. Joey. The eyes for Illuminati.
Our favorite immigrant, E. Joey. So Stonewall happened in 1969, and that in New York was created. It was a riot that happened.
Of all the years.
Of all the years, it had to be the most sexual. Because of that, a lot of groups were coming out. A lot of demonstrations took place because of that. And it was one of the first times that the gay community really got their voices heard, wanting civil rights. A lot of stuff came from that. A lot of groups were starting, like the Gay Liberation Front, which was started by Reverend Morris Knight, as I think you mentioned before. So while New York was fighting the good fight, gay communities of San Francisco and Los Angeles decided they wanted to be loud and proud too. So it was a year later, and Reverend Morris Knight, like I said, of the Gay Liberation Front, Bob Humphreys, who founded the United States Mission, and Reverend Troy Perry, who was the founder of...
Troy Perry, that's the one we talked about.
Yes. He was the founder of the Universal Fellowship of Metropolitan Community Churches. The three of them decided that they wanted to plan a celebration in commemoration of the fight for civil rights that happened in New York. It was supposed to be a year later. So together they formed the Christopher Street West Association, which is a non-profit service organization named after the area in West Village where the Stonewall Inn was. And then the conflicts began. Most notably, homosexuality was quite illegal in the state of California. Many had gone to trial and had lost court battles that secure their rights as human beings. So this parade, if it were to happen, would need permits. Previously, there was a march of several different minority groups whose rights had been stripped, and the gay community was part of that, but they weren't like loud and proud about it. I think you mentioned that they were sort of like, we're people and we're suddenly in this thing. Like they weren't like...
Well, that was part of, because the Black Cat demonstration was like part of a more citywide thing where it was like Mexican rights, African American rights, gays too.
Yeah, and they were kind of dependably meek was what they were being called.
The newspapers were like, the dependably meek gays are finally speaking out. How dare they?
So this parade, if it was going to happen, was not going to be that. It was going to be a pride parade, if you will. It wouldn't be undercut by fear of the police or angry residents. After Stonewall and so many other conflicts, the leaders of the gay community wanted to celebrate themselves, their identity, and the spirit of resistance. But having to go through the proper channels to have a parade on Hollywood Boulevard, which is where it originally ran, seemed impossible. According to Reverend Perry, he was told by LAPD chief at the time, Edward Davis, that...
LAPD Blues?
LAPD Blues. There was a show with LAPD in the title. I don't remember what it was.
Hill Street Blues. Yeah, that had LAPD in the title, right?
I was going to say, according to the Chips... According to Reverend Perry, he was told by LAPD chief at the time, Edward Davis, that, quote, as far as I'm concerned, granting a permit to a group of homosexuals to parade down Hollywood Boulevard would be the same as giving a permit to a group of thieves and robbers.
Which they did the year before.
Yeah. Clearly, those two things correlate because they've stolen my heart. For them to get these permits, city authorities required Christopher Street West to post 2 bonds. The first would be for $1 million, and the second would be for $500,000, as well as $1,500 in cash to pay for a police officer who would be dispatched to protect the parade attendees.
One police officer?
No, like a group
battalion.
of a battalion.
You can hire those?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you're supposed to be charged for that, but yeah, you can hire that for parades. That's how the Klan is protected. But luckily,
God bless them.
so that's a lot of money. That's like a lot of all the money I've ever seen. But luckily, the times were it ain't me, babe. Times were changing, and minority groups were starting to be protected. The American Civil Liberties Union were stepping in to help the organizers of this. The ACLU had those $1.5 million commission fees dropped, and then there was that $1,500 police service charge that was also dropped. The Superior Court demanded that they drop that because no one else was going to have to pay for that. So all this back and forth left Christopher Street West, after everything was said and done and they hadn't have to pay anything, they now had 2 days to organize a parade that would go down Hollywood Boulevard. So it was a mad scramble, plus the usual mean people death threats that the CSW boys were getting. Morris Knight was receiving death threats up to the morning of the parade. So the first Pride
Welcome
Parade,
to the 60s.
it all looks fun and sideburnsies.
The best part of waking up is
Waking up
is being able to do that, but also fingers in your cup.
So the first Pride Parade took place on June 20th, 1970. The original route went down Hollywood Boulevard, starting at McCadden Place near Hollywood and Highland, moving east to Vine Street, and then back to Hollywood and Highland to finish.
Went backwards? Like, woo, back it up.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. Like you got
midway.
midway.
They probably made like a loop.
Yeah, I think it is a loop. People at the end would go halfway, turn around, then complete it. You'd only ever see halfway. I'm just kidding. You get it? You get the diagram I see in my head?
Nope.
I'm doing something with my fingers to display what I mean by this, and it's just sort of rabbit ears moving left
You
to
just
right.
keep making Illuminati symbols. It's not going to help you.
It's going to help me, trust me. When they kick the door down and I have my hand up in tiger mode, which we all recognize. Oh, no, I'm not supposed to say what it means. But they're going to recognize that I'm Illuminati, and you're going to be like, ooh.
I smeared lamb's blood on the door, so they're not coming in here, okay?
I've been writing checks all day, okay? Checks made in ram's blood.
LA Rams. Welcome to Los Angeles, boys. Go get them.
So the
Tigers.
Rams.
Rams.
The first parade saw about 1,000 people come and join it. To some, it was also seen as much more of a protest than a celebration. I can imagine how scary that first march must have been after like years of being harassed by police officers. To like walk down Hollywood Boulevard and be openly gay must have been like, who's gonna come at me first? But there was a lot of fun to be had, no matter how on guard you had to be. Thousands of community participants chanted 2, 4, 6, 8. Gay is just as good as straight. The Advocate, which like I said was a direct result of the Black Cat riot, had a float and loaded it with men in swimsuits. And then there was a conservative gay group wearing business suits, or as I call them, people in business suits. Booyah! Now, if you're asking, the next 2 parade years were more fun, let me tell you that they were so lavish and extreme that it had the third year, 1973, had to be canceled because the 2 sandwiched years were so crazy.
They ran out of money?
I don't know if they ran out of money as much as they were so extreme.
Tone it down.
Yeah, tone it down a little bit. Each parade was more extravagant than the last, each pushing the boundaries of what the mainstream was willing to accept and tolerate as far as public behavior. During the parades of 1971 and 72, sponsors of the parade were complaining that the content was too lewd and were threatening to pull out of financing.
What were they doing?
I couldn't find.
What could they possibly have been
I couldn't
doing?
find that many reports, but I did find some blog postings, so I don't know to trust them or not, but I'll read what I read. So I don't know if this is just straight people reporting.
Oh my God.
They're
2 men standing on the same float.
It looks like they're holding hands, but I can't be sure. There were allegedly reports of nudity and colorful banners and signage that were bordering on bad taste. Now, what I'm going to say right now, explicit content, so if you're underage, please close your ears.
Oh my.
There was something called a cockapillar, which was
All right, I'll be outside.
apparently there was a giant Vaseline jar from the original parade float, and it was joined by another float made of wire and paper mache to look like a Chinese dragon with a penis head that spit up white fluid down Hollywood Boulevard. And let me just say, Hollywood Boulevard has seen worse spills. That was an extreme case, obviously, but it wasn't.
It was less than usual.
It was less than usual, yeah.
Cockapillar.
The cockapillar. So that's an extreme case.
Caterpillar? I just understood it's supposed to be a caterpillar.
Oh my God. You shouldn't be listening to. You know, when I told you to cover your ears, I kind of meant you.
So it's like a chicken caterpillar and it like vomits?
It's a rooster that. Does it become a butterfly?
Cockapillar.
This wasn't only upsetting straight people.
Who?
I'd hate to be woken up by that.
Best part of waking up is a cockapillar outside your window, if you ask me.
Don't let him in. Don't let him in. The calls are coming from inside the house. It wasn't only upsetting straight people, but many of the members of the gay and lesbian community were outraged because they've been fighting to be seen as respectable, and the cockapillar is something of a radical behavior. But it's like the loud and proud spirit that fights the suppression of homosexual feelings that many of the parade participants want to challenge. Like, you have these two groups sort of splitting up.
I think because the gay pride parade happened in reality just a few weeks, a week or so ago, and I think the similar thing I read was happening. The same thing, like older gay people were like, yeah, we want a little, we don't want to seem like insane.
Yeah,
And then the
exactly.
younger people were like, nipple piercing floats.
Were you on that float? I was.
No, I was on this year's cockapillar. It's a cockafly now.
It was kind of hard to get it up, but other
by God, we
punchline.
It's kind of hard to get it up, and what other offensive jokes?
So by 1973,
Have respect for the cockapillar.
Please God. By 1973, a coalition formed by owners of a gay bathhouse who lobbied complaints about the lewd behavior of the parade, mainly that this sort of conduct left the gay community open to harsh criticisms of those outside of the community. Like I said, it sort of split up the community in two, of those who wanted to sort of be seen as respectable members of society and those who wanted to counter that. And it was decided that there would be no gay pride parade that year. But the very next year, 1974, gay filmmaker Pat Rocco led the charge to bring the parade back along with a festival to go with it. This year, it would start on Sunset and Cherokee. This pride parade festival offered to the community, gay or straight, rides, games, food, and information booths for the curious. Goes on for another about 6 years, and in around 1979, there were a lot of different things going on. On top of LAPD hassling the parade participants for years, there were redevelopments through the city of Hollywood, which were making it harder to continually have the parade either down Sunset or Hollywood. The parade was then moved to an unincorporated section of Los Angeles County down on Santa Monica Boulevard between Crescent Heights to Robertson Boulevard. This is now where the parade continues to thrive, as the residents and local officials were very supportive of the LGBT community. So in 1984, this area was incorporated and is now known as West Hollywood. The city of West Hollywood waives all permit fees and now has consistently been supported for the celebration. In addition, the city has paid for the sheriff's deputies needed to police the parade route, which is pretty cool.
So the gay pride parade sort of helped create West Hollywood.
Yeah, it
in
was
a
one
way?
of the
Chicken and egg situation.
Exactly. So the 80s as a whole were like a rough decade for the community because of the AIDS and HIV epidemic and whatnot. But it didn't diminish the pride involved in pride parades, which were no longer just in 3 big cities. It seemed like most big cities had the gay pride parade. And I don't know if I said it already. First one here in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
That's
right.
first one. I don't know if I said that already. Through the decades since its formation, they've always had something to fight against. In the 80s, like I said, it was the stigma of like HIV and AIDS that had been placed on the community. In the 1990s, they rallied against don't ask, don't tell laws in the military. In the 2000s, the parade was all about marriage and family equality. In 2010, Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa opened the doors to the Getty House, which was the residence of the mayor, and offered it up for the first LA Pride Garden Party, which was the first time that's ever happened.
Wait a minute. The mayor lives in a house called the Getty House?
Yeah, I guess when you're the mayor, you live in the Getty House. No, Cockapillar, you have to stay home. This is a black tie event.
Just throw some black paint on him.
In 2011, Villaraigosa declared June as LGBT Heritage Month in the city of LA, which is pretty cool. This month has been very gay friendly.
Yeah, for the most part.
For the most part. So 2016, a year of progress now. Last year in 2015, marriage equality was fought for and won on the side of gay and lesbian and transsexuals and bisexuals, which was a huge deal, not only because now they have equal right to get married, but they also have the tax stuff and the hospital visits and such. And then on June 12th, a nameless idiot nut job in Orlando, Florida took a crazy people gun into the Pulse nightclub and committed the worst mass shooting in history up to this point, but give it a week or so and then someone's going to try to outdo that. Tragic, but that's in Florida. Greg, stay on the West Coast. Well, the very next day, LAPD apprehended someone who had plans on taking explosives and a loaded gun to the Pride Parade with intent on raining on the parade. Good job, LAPD, really, on stopping that, and thank you so much to those people who ratted him out. Good job. It could have been a real bummer episode to do research on. LA Pride 2016 runs from June 10th through 12th, so you missed it, at West Hollywood Park.
See you next year,
See you next
Cockapillar.
year. Christopher Street West funding comes mainly from the Pride Festival fees, beverage and admission charges, corporate sponsorship, and the parade entry fees. Any surplus funds accumulated by CSW are returned to the community through various programs.
Do they not do the Cockapillar anymore?
I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think that they had a float of a large penis floating around Santa Monica Boulevard.
You don't think they would?
I mean, like,
I feel like that's exactly what would happen.
how could that be?
Because it's very funny.
I mean, it's super funny, yeah. You can't just parade something like that around the street. Jim Morrison got arrested because of that.
Yeah, that was a different time.
You're right.
And he was straight. It wasn't easy for straight people back then. I went to the
You can't yell at them for having a penis out. Their rights are different.
I was at the gay pride parade in Vancouver once.
Oh, yeah?
And like it's a lot of naked people, so I wouldn't be surprised if a paper mache naked person, well, just one part of the naked person.
Yeah. See, that's what I don't understand is like, okay, it's illegal to be naked in public.
Not during a parade, which is why I'm never in jail.